Welcome back to the show, Unbroken, Stories of Resilience with Sam Davis. Sam, I am right here. For those of you that are new to the channel, a little bit about me. I'm a private practice interventionist. Been in business for 14 years, having served over 1,000 families in my career. I'm also a person in long-term recovery, and I love putting out content, having deep conversations with people who have overcome trauma, addiction, what have you. Probably the most special guest that I'll ever have on this show, period, is on here today. He's 23 years old. He lived with 2 addicted parents. He had trauma. He overcame that. And I'm proud to say that he's my son. And he's here today with me to tell his story. His name's Adam. Welcome, Adam.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
I'm glad you're here, buddy.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, you're my son.
Yeah.
So, son, why now? Why at this point in your life are you wanting to put your story out here for the public to see?
Well, because I feel more comfortable doing it now. I'm in a good headspace to do it now. A year ago, I was not in a good spot to really talk to anybody about this because I was still anxious and dealing with all the trauma that my childhood caused me. But now I feel like I can really help people because I got the help that I needed, and I'm comfortable to say that I'm functioning.
Good.
I'm healthy mentally.
Yeah. So what was it like growing up? Where'd you grow up? What was it like being a little Adam, being a little kid with 2 addicted parents?
I grew up in a trailer in the middle of the woods right beside a old fox pen, and I remember riding around with my cousins on the 4-wheelers and doing all that fun stuff, but I always felt anxious. I was always never comfortable. I was never comfortable growing up. I never felt safe in my own skin. Never felt safe anywhere.
Like, man, I remember the day you were born. I'll never forget that day. And I remember, like, when you came out, you were blue, and I was just sobbing in my mask, and I watched it all unfold, this miraculous, childbirth. What a miracle to watch. And I was eating a lot of pills at that time, and I was fully addicted to pills. And I was smoking weed. I still was maintaining the job. I had the house, I had the land. And I said when you were born that I was never going to pick up pills again. Like, the love that you experience when you watch your kid being born can never be matched. And I said that I was going to be a good dad, and I said that I was going to not eat pills anymore. And I meant it. But the day I got home from the hospital with you, I had to have pills. From there, the way you grew up was nothing at all like I had planned, like I had foreseen. And what is your perspective on that? Like, your earliest memory of mom and dad, like, what was that like?
I can't remember a time when I was younger where I saw any signs of love between you two, ever. And I mean, up until the point that y'all split up, I mean, and it was just a very unstable place for a child, I believe, and I feel like I know it impacted me in a very harmful way. I've struggled with anxiety, depression, and just always worried about something. Always worried.
Now, did you know at an early age, I mean, you say you remember the yelling and the arguments and just the chaos, but did you know that drugs were a part of that? Were you aware of that, or were you just like, God, what the hell is wrong with these people?
Well, I mean, when I was growing up, I never saw y'all sober. So, I mean, growing up, I just figured it was normal, that was life, and that was just how it is. But then once I got to school and I started hanging out with people, I got old enough to go to people's houses and saw how their families were. It just opened my eyes like, this isn't how it's supposed to be at all. I'm not supposed to feel this way. My parents aren't supposed to be acting like that. My parents shouldn't be in and out of jail. I should be able to rely on them to pick me up from school. I shouldn't have to rely on my grandparents to do the stuff that my parents were supposed to do.
The grandparents stepped in.
My grandparents, if it wasn't for Nani and Papa, that's what I call them, then I don't know who I would be today, where I would be, or what I would be doing. I know for a fact I wouldn't be the person that I am today. The person that I am today has everything to do with them.
And that's tough to hear, being your father. And, you know, your mom knowing that, I mean, that'd be tough to hear, but that's the truth. That's the truth. And thank God for them.
Of course. And I see you as my dad now, of course. I mean, you're my dad. My mom's my mom. Y'all always be my parents. But y'all didn't play the role of my parents.
Crafting of where you are now.
Yeah. The person that I am now has everything to do with Nani and Papa.
Definitely. I mean, for me, looking back on my childhood, it's hard for me to put an age to something.
Yeah.
Right? But, like, do you remember when it clicked, or did it click when you were like, wait a minute, man, like, my parents aren't trusted by my friends' parents. Like, my parents aren't trusted by anyone.
I noticed it when I was older. I noticed that whenever I was staying with my mom, that none of my friends from school would come over. It wasn't really ever a discussion. I mean, I've asked, I asked, but it just stopped there. And I didn't really know why, but now that I'm older, I can completely understand why that was the case. That I would only be able to hang out with my cousins and my family members while I was with my mom at the trailer, and I could only hang out with my school friends at my grandparents' house because it was such an unhealthy environment for a child. I struggle a lot with the fact that my little brother, he didn't come with me to stay at my Nani and Papa's. When parents behave the way that y'all behaved, and it was such a hostile environment, I feel like the worst thing that you could possibly do is to split up the siblings. When you're in that scenario and you're in that just nasty childhood that some of us are given, then the only thing you really have is your friends and your siblings, if you have any. I feel like that would have helped both of us a lot if we were together.
If y'all had just stayed together.
If we stayed
no
close.
matter what.
If we stayed together. No matter if I went somewhere, he'd go too.
Did you question that at all as it was happening?
From what I remember, I don't think I did ever question it. I might have questioned it to Nani or Papa, but I never got really any clear answers when I was young about what was really going on. I just remember being angry all the time that I wasn't getting those answers.
How'd your anger show up, you think?
My anger showed up going towards my mom. I treated my mom pretty harshly. I was always yelling at her. In my eyes, she never did anything right, and I was just so angry at her because she just wasn't doing what she was supposed to be doing, and you weren't either. I mean, y'all failed pretty tremendously.
And we can put it on, well, I was addicted, and I had this, and I had that, which is true. But we had responsibilities that we set aside in order to feed our habit. Now, to us, well, I'm going to speak for me, it's like that was the last thing I wanted to do, was abandon my kids. Like, it really was. That was the last thing I wanted to do. And it's like you slip into this darkness, and it's like it becomes impossible feeling to pull yourself out of it. It's just like it's one thing after the next, and you justify it by saying, I'm going to do better tomorrow. And every time I would wake up the next day, I'd be like, man, I'm not going to do this again. I'm going to wake up and I'm going to get out of this bed, and I'm going to go to work, and I'm not going to smoke crack. I'm not going to do. I'm not going to spend the money. I'm not going to do. And I did it anyway. And I feel like that any way of explaining that is like it's an excuse, when they're at the end of the day, what happened to me as a child was not on me, but how I allowed that to influence and dictate putting substances in my system to the point where I was damaging the lives of the ones I loved the most and didn't do shit about it. That's my responsibility. You know what I mean? That's like, you're 100% correct. Like, we failed you. And when I signed over custody of you to Nani and Papa, like looking back on that, I'm like, what was I doing? I mean, it was the right thing to do. It's like I gave up. And you're right, 100%. Like, we failed y'all. Addiction is a really messed up thing. It can turn good people into bad people. It can turn, well, I say bad people. Well, yeah, if you looked at me then at those years, I was a bad person. Right?
I didn't look at you or my mom as bad people. I was angry, really angry, that y'all were failing as parents, but never once did I hate y'all, ever.
So you picked up on early that, hey, my parents are failing me. You picked up on that? You're like, they're dropping the ball.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of obvious when you move to live with your grandparents and your dad's out the picture, and then mom's, every weekend I'm with her, she's running around with a bunch of dudes, and I see bruises on her, and I have memories of people hitting on her. I've always had this kind of overprotectiveness towards y'all. Like, every time somebody would say something bad, even family members, every time Nani or Papa or my aunt or anybody would say anything about my mother, I would get so mad at them. And I would tell them, don't say anything about my mom. Y'all have no right to come to me and tell me all the bad stuff about my mom. And it still makes me mad to this day. And one time, this was during high school, my mom was in a trailer, and there was a bunch of people living there with her. And her boyfriend at the time, I know he was being kind of rough with her. So one weekend, first weekend I went over there, I was like, if anything happens, I'm going to bring my shotgun just in case. And I said, if he puts his hands on my mom, I'm going to blow a hole through his chest.
Did you mean that?
Yes.
At that moment, did you mean that?
100%. 100%. I loaded up the shells, and I kept it in my truck. And then he started his stuff, and he ran out the house, running down the road, acting crazy. And I was like, this is either going to happen or it's not. If he touches my mom, I'm gonna have to do something. Thank God nothing happened.
Thank God.
But I was in that moment. I was dead serious. I was tired of seeing bruises and my mom crying and all the hurt that she was going through. I felt like it was my job, since nobody was protecting her and Cody couldn't, that me as the older brother and her oldest son, it was my job to protect her. I've kind of learned that everything that happened with y'all and everything that y'all were going through, it had nothing to do with me.
But yeah, man, like dad's here one second, gone the next. Mom's here one time, gone the next. No stability at all. Like, what was that like for you?
It brought a lot of mistrust and people, period, just people. I am happiest when I'm being left alone now. And I feel like having a big part of that is because growing up, every time I was around people, some bad shit would always happen. I was always scared around people. So now, even being 23 and going to a trauma center and getting the help that I need and being better, I still have that I'd rather be on my own and I can trust myself more than I can trust anybody else.
And we'll get into in a little bit later about what you did and why you went to and where you went and what happened and what brought all that about. But you did. You got your trauma work done because you had trauma. I imagine because there were several years of your life when you were little that you needed someone. You needed your mom and dad, and they weren't there. So you made an agreement with yourself that, you know what? I'm here for me. I'm here and I can trust me. How were you feeling about yourself?
Yeah, 100%. I could trust myself, and the main thing that helped me the most is I could trust myself and I could trust my friends. And I don't know if I'll ever be this big, huge, just family's the most important thing to me.
So, fast forward just for a little bit, I'm back. I'm in your life. I'm sober, been sober a long time, got a career. I'm pretty stable. And, we're having family get-togethers and, and I'm big on family. Although my actions didn't show it at all when you were a little kid. And I'm out here smoking crack, acting like a fool, being irresponsible. But now in my life, family is very important. And I'm saying, hey, man, we got this for the family. It's what family does. Is there a part of you that's going, man, I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling it. And really, Dad, how dare you? Like family's all that important. Like, where was that in 2006? Where was that in 2004? Where was that in 2008?
I don't think that, but every time there's a family get together, I always get a little uneasy because I feel like I know I should be comfortable around y'all because y'all are my family. I feel like I should be able to be myself, and I am for the most part, but I still feel a little bit guarded when I'm around family.
Is that all family or
It's,
and I'm not asking you to name names. I'm not putting anybody on Front Street here, but I mean, is it just overall?
It's overall, but some more than others.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like me and you are close. We're close now. We're really close, and I feel like you being a big family man now, I feel like that helps out the family as a whole a lot. And I love 4th of July. I love Christmas. Love getting together, of course. But it's always just I feel more comfortable and safe talking to my friends than I do talking about family.
Because you had the experience when you were little that, hey, they're here.
Yeah, my friends have always been there.
They're always been there?
Always been there. I remember getting taken from my mom by my cousin and my aunt. And we went back to my aunt's house, and my buddy Ed was there, my cousin Stormy, and I was an anxious wreck. I didn't understand why I was getting taken from my mom. I don't know. I was taking a nap in the house. I woke up, and it was just chaos. Chaos broke loose. Mom was crying. The cops were there. She's saying, "It's okay. I'll get you back. I'll be right back. I'll be there." And then I remember just getting put into my aunt's car. And then my cousin saying, "I'm sorry, Adam. I'm really sorry." And I'm just sitting there bawling my eyes out. I don't know what's going on. And I remember getting back to my aunt's house, laying on that couch, bawling, crying. And my cousin and my good buddy Ed sitting there, rubbing my back, comforting me. And many of my friends have done similar things like that on many occasions for multiple different reasons.
Right.
They've always been there.
Right.
My friends are one of the most important things to me.
Right.
Because I could always rely on my friends. I could not always rely on my family.
Man, this puts so many things into perspective for me. To hear you share this, and me being your father, puts so many things into perspective for me. Like, this is, like, thank you for sharing what you're sharing. With not just me, but for everybody. But, man, this is, I'm glad we're doing this. Man, that day that I went off for good, not for good, but I mean that day that I went off and finally got well. Do you remember that day? You remember the policeman giving you the RJ raccoon?
I remember it like it was yesterday.
But did you, I mean, like, I woke up that day in Virginia expecting to lay my head in Virginia that night. And I went to the probation officers. Do you remember that? Can you believe that I had you pee in a cup? In a red Solo cup, and then I put it in a condom so I could go in there and give a clean drug screen. Do you remember that?
I don't remember that, but I remember my mother doing it. I don't remember peeing in a condom, though. I can't say.
No, you peed in a cup. I put it in a condom.
Yeah.
I went, look, I draw a line here, man. I'm not going to give my son a condom.
I was about to say, I don't remember anything about that.
I'm not going to give my 7-year-old son a condom, but I'll have you pee in a red Solo cup so I can put it in a condom. God, man, the insanity of this stuff, dude. The insanity of it. But that day I went to probation with a condom full of your urine in my pocket to give her. And I got intervened on, and I was headed to Texas, and they brought you up to say goodbye to me. And I mean, like, I wanted to see y'all, but I was so full of shame, and I'm like, man, here I go again, walking out of their life. And I remember pulling away in that interventionist car, looking out the back glass, and y'all are standing there looking at me, and you had that little raccoon in your hand. And I'm like, here we go again.
Like, I remember the color of the car that you drove off in. I remember what the cop looked like giving me that stuffed animal. I remember crying. I remember on the way there, Mom saying, "We're just going to go see your dad. It's fine. We're just going to go see your dad."
Just giving half-truths and bullshit.
We're going to go spend time with your dad. Cop's just standing there, and then that cop came out with that stuffed animal. And that stuffed animal helped me a lot.
Did it really?
Yeah.
Did it really?
Yeah.
What do you think that was?
I don't know what the deal is with the stuffed animal, but it gave me comfort. And I wish I had that stuffed animal to this day.
Do you remember coming down to Texas to visit me in treatment that time for that 3-hour visit that you got?
I remember it briefly, and I remember it not helping me one bit. I remember getting in that treatment place, and I remember you sitting there on that bench, and I think I brought some toys with me.
Mm-hmm.
And we played toys, and it just felt like I saw you for like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then it brought back all these feelings. And I was like, well, great, Dad's back. But then I had to leave, go home, and you were staying there.
After 3 hours, you had to leave.
So I don't think that was a great idea at all.
Mm-hmm. I'll agree with you on
going
that.
over there.
I'll agree with you
because
on
it
that.
just brought back a lot of hurt.
Mm-hmm. I'll agree with you 100% on that. I'll agree with you 100%. I'll tell you what it did for me. You and I went out in the backyard of that treatment center and we threw Frisbee. I don't know if you remember that, but we threw Frisbee. And I would have sat there and thrown Frisbee with you for as long as you wanted to. Because I had started to have a shift at that point. I had started to get well. My mind had started to shift. I was fully detoxed. I had started embracing the solution. I was starting to look at some really hard truths about myself. I'd started to have that awakening spirit. And I'd have sat out there and thrown Frisbee with you as long as you wanted to. And I said then that, and I realized then that all the other times before I went to treatment that I was with you or Cody or anyone else in my life, that, yeah, I would be outside throwing ball with you. That, yeah, I would be in the floor playing Legos. That, yeah, I would be in the floor playing Matchbox. But in the back of my mind was, when are they going to get tired of doing this so I can go do what I need to do to change the way I feel? And it really hit me when you came down to visit, which, you know, looking back, I don't think that it was helpful for you to be there, and that was the most important piece, was you to be there. I agree with you 100%, but it reinforced to me that I'll never go back to that.
They should have explained what was going on to me more. I was always left out of the loop. I was always getting half answers. I was always never knowing what we were doing. Because everybody thought that I don't need to know. I don't need to know all of it, but I feel like just trying to explain what is happening.
You know, one thing that Nani and Papa did for you that was helpful, I think, is they got you into therapy immediately. I mean, Nani was heavy on the therapy. Got to get to therapy. You went to a treatment program up in Maryland that has for the kids of addicted people, and you were there for a weekend. Do you remember any part of that at all?
I can't say that I do. I mean, it rings a bell staying at some random place for a weekend, but yeah. I don't remember any of it really. Besides, something in my head's telling me that it rings a bell.
Yeah. And just because you don't remember it now doesn't mean that you didn't get some helpful information then to help you understand some things.
Yeah, of course.
You know, and I will say that, you know, I do know that your grandparents, they filled you in on a lot, but they also, everybody around tried to protect you all from it. But I feel like when everyone was trying to protect you all from it, but they ended up giving you half truths, just like you said, it just kind of kept you confused. And man, kids are intuitive. Like, we know when we're getting bullshitted sometimes, you know. And you're a sharp guy. Like, you're no fool. I'm sure you knew, like, hey, I'm getting bullshitted here.
Yeah.
My family's bullshitting me. My friends don't. My family bullshits me. Friends don't. You were experiencing that and making agreements with yourself justifiably and true that friends got my back, family bullshits me and abandons me.
I think that's 100% correct. I just remember never knowing what was happening. Just always being scared. And I think part of me being scared was because I didn't know what was going on. Mm-hmm. Because nothing was explained to me. They would always sugarcoat it. It's just the little bit more detail that they could have added, more explanation, I feel like would have helped me a lot with the situation that I was in.
Man, that's rough. That's a rough way to come up. You're not alone in that. There's people that this is happening to all over. There's a lot of grandparents raising their grandkids. I came back, and I got full custody of you. I was out of the picture for 2 years. I'd come back and visit. And I remember the day I moved back, I drove all the way from Texas to Virginia, and I got to where you were at about 1:30 in the morning. And I was excited to see you because I was home. I was glad to be home. But I was also very afraid because I had no idea how to be a dad. I had no idea like I was still carrying along a lot of that, and I still do. A lot of guilt around like not showing up and all the truths that you just told, like painfully aware of it, right? And I'm like, how will I ever make this right? And is he gonna hate me? And how do I even approach him? What am I to say? Like, hey man, I just felt like anything I would have said, hey buddy, I love you, I'm glad I'm here. Like just feel like you didn't want to hear that shit. You were like happy to see me, but you were really like standoffish, a little leery of me, very leery of me, understandably so. Part of me was, all right, I'm dad, I'm back, dad's back, I'm a dad, I'm gonna act like a dad. And you were like, I don't really know this guy. That's how I experienced you. Was like, I don't really know this guy. I kind of look like him, but he's got my last name, but I don't really know him. Papa's more my dad. Is that how it was? I mean,
Yeah. Especially because when you came back, you looked nothing like you did before. So it was like a stranger coming in saying that you're my dad.
I didn't even think about that. Like, I look totally different.
Yeah, all your hair was gone.
Yeah, well, I mean, well, I cut my,
Yeah.
I grew up. I grew up in treatment. I grew up when I sobered up. Well, started to. But I never really even thought of that, of how physically I look like a different person. You had no idea who I was. No clue. And here I am trying to force these things on you and force you to do this. And, hey, we're going to go do this. You're my son. And you're like, dude, wait a minute. I mean, I felt that. It was like, hey, man, you invited this into your life. Deal with it. And I made amends to you because part of the recovery process is like making amends, and it's living amends, like change me, show up differently. But also like I talked to you. Our relationship didn't jive. It didn't mesh. It didn't. I mean, we got along. I mean, we did stuff, but you could still feel, and I didn't know if you felt it. Did you feel the tension between us? Like this, there's this wall between us. Did you feel that?
Yeah, but I think that just comes natural. I think that's just a normal thing.
Yeah.
I mean, just imagine just dad not being a part of your life. When you were a part of my life before you went to treatment, you weren't a part of my life still.
Mm-hmm.
You're always laid up in bed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you would take me to your work and stuff. I mean, those were good memories. But that's about all the memories I have of you before you went to treatment.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. So, I mean, even before you got back, you were still a stranger.
So, man, like you're feeling that way. You're feeling like, all right, I know he's my dad, but he's a stranger. Now y'all are telling me that I have to leave my hometown and move to Richmond to go to a different school with this guy?
As soon as you got back and we moved to Richmond, everything changed. I wasn't around my friends. It's just like starting a whole new life, pretty much.
And do you mind sharing why you went over to Richmond, why we had to move to Richmond, or what was that about,
I have, like, learning disability. So, like, I'm dyslexic.
Yeah.
And my grandma
Mm-hmm.
signed me up to go to this school called Riverside, which specializes in people with that learning disability and other ones. It helped me learn, but I think a big problem with my learning is that I was going through all that shit.
Oh, he's got ADD. Remember that?
And I took medication.
Yeah. And that medication, like, made you numb.
Made me numb. I didn't eat.
Yeah.
I'm still skin and bones, but
yeah,
I was skinny.
There's this dude, Gabor Mate, and he's big on trauma and how it affects kids. And he's like, all these kids getting put on ADD medication. They're claiming it's ADD. And he said there are cases of ADD. Don't get me wrong. And I am not a psychiatrist, so I'm just reporting the news here. But he's like, you got a kid with two distracted parents, with parents that are in an active addiction. The but you never know where he's going to be one day to the next. One day his dad's here, one day his mom's here, one day they're both gone, one day he's at grandma's house, his brother isn't around, he's, dad's gone for a long period of time. It's just absolute chaos. How in the hell are they supposed to focus? And you're going to take that child and you're going to put them in school and you're going to have them sit there and try to pay attention and do homework when they know that when they get home, they don't know what they're going to get. Dyslexia, I mean, that's just, you have that.
Yeah.
I've seen you back trailers up. I know you have dyslexia. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I definitely have it, but I remember just arguing with her about it. I was like, I don't know why I got to be on this. I'm fine. I don't need it. Mm-hmm. And I remember Papa agreeing with me. He's like, he's just worried. He's always worried. Mm-hmm. And who can blame him? Mm-hmm. He said, who can blame him? Mm-hmm. This medication is not going to help him. Mm-hmm. And I still believe that. Mm-hmm. I think that medication was a bad call.
Mm-hmm. You weren't on it very long when I got back. And that was a terrifying time for me. I had just started a new career. I'm over in Richmond. All of a sudden, I'm a full-time dad to 2 kids that are trying to get to know me again. Cody didn't know me. Cody didn't have any idea who I was. I just showed up one day. He said, oh, okay, all right, I'm going with you. We're all just trying to figure this thing out. And I found myself at times, and you were angry with me. I'm going to get back to what I was talking about. Like, I'd made amends to you verbally, and I was showing up as best as I could. And you were still angry. Like you could feel that wall. And I remember going to my sponsor. I said, hey man, I've got some problems with my oldest. I said, I made amends to him. He said, how old was he when you made amends to him? I was like, well, 9. And you were 12 at this point. He said, you may want to go back to him and not do a whole lot of talking, but just do a whole lot of listening. And I went back to you and I called you in the back bedroom and you laid across the bed, and I laid across the bed, and I said, I don't really know what I said or how it evolved, but you started talking. You gave me an earful, and I heard you. Things shifted at that point a little bit. They shifted.
I remember the point of it shifting because I remember when we first moved, it was like you said, it was like the whole house was angry.
Because I wanted to command a certain respect and reputation that I had yet not deserved. I hadn't shown you all over a period of time that Dad's here, Dad's always going to be here, and this is what it is. I hadn't earned y'all's respect yet. And I was sitting there acting like I demanded the respect, like y'all should respect me. I'm Dad, I'm doing this, and, me. So fast forward a little bit, we had that little shift after I just listened to you. Like I listened. There was a little shift in us. Mm-hmm. I showed up a little bit differently. And because I showed up a little bit differently, you reacted a little bit differently. And still knew that there was a long ways to go in the trust. But you got your friend group now, and you're settled in over in Richmond. You're a country boy in the city. I know you've hated that since day one, and I did as well. I get it. You got your friend group. You're doing your schoolwork. You're moving along. Nobody's got to ride your butt on schoolwork anymore. The school works. It did what it was supposed to do, and it built your confidence. You're a fluent reader. You communicate well. Like it did what it was supposed to do. You graduated. You immediately went back to your hometown. You met a good woman, a good girl, and she is a great girl. You've really got a good one. What happened? How did everything in the past that had happened to you, all the experiences that you just described, which were painful experiences, at our hand, your mom and I's hand, you experienced those. How did that manifest when you turned 20 years old? How did all that blossom into, and what did it blossom into? All of those past experiences, what happened?
When I was 20, I was, even before that, maybe a little bit after, I was still very anxious. No matter how much therapy I went to, I still extremely anxious. Didn't really feel like it helped much.
Because it was talk therapy.
Yeah, it was
right?
talk therapy.
You sit in there and you talk to them.
It wasn't intense.
Right.
It wasn't enough.
A lot of nodding.
Yeah.
You'd be talking or playing with cars or whatever, just in there talking, and they'd be doing a lot of nodding and talking to you.
Yep.
Right.
And sometimes talking isn't enough.
Yeah. Especially with trauma, because you can talk until you're blue in the face. It's not reaching the part of the brain where the trauma is.
Yeah. Struggling really badly with trust issues with my girlfriend, and that was causing a lot of problems between us, and I was going to lose her, and I was going to lose some other people too as well. I was just tired of feeling like shit all the time, feeling terrible. I was never happy. I forgot what it was like to be calm, to relax, because I was always on edge. I was always worried about, is she cheating, or is this person talking behind my back, or is
just full of anxiety.
Always think somebody's against me, and that nobody truly cares. So I went up to you because we grew a pretty tight bond, and I was like, Dad, I need some help. All right, I remember that day. I need to go somewhere because I'm tired of feeling this way. So you looked around, did your thing, and found this place in Kentucky called the Bridge to Recovery, which is an intensive therapy place. You're there for
trauma. It's an immersion is what they call it, is a trauma immersion, trauma intensive, like you unplugged for 2 weeks. Man, can I jump in here for a second?
Yeah.
When I sobered up and I really took to recovery and healing and started to understand alcoholism and addiction, and the more trainings I got and the more people that I worked with and the more families I was in front of, and the more I started to understand, the more I started to pick out alcoholism in you and Cody. When y'all are like, 11, 12 years old, 13 years old, I'm trying to pick, that was an alcoholic thinking right there. That was an alcoholic. So I know I was annoying as hell trying to pick out alcoholism in y'all. And I was concerned, because I knew you were anxious. I knew you had some stuff balled up. I knew you had the past that was still in there, that was manifesting into anxiety and distrust. I was picking up on that, and I was terrified that you were going to end up an alcoholic or an addict. I was terrified. And I feel like, and you may disagree, and this is just what I think, is that if you hadn't gotten some work done, it would have evolved into it. Generational alcoholism is really a lot of generational trauma that people don't heal and people don't treat, and they don't realize they have it, and they say, it's genetics. Well, I'm not getting into that debate, but this would have been generational trauma, because our family trauma started, 1863, when our ancestor was blown to pieces. That's where our family trauma started. And from there, alcohol, and every generation coming down. But man, I'm going to tell you what, that day you reached out to me and you said, that is the most adult thing that I have experienced from any adult, much less my 20-year-old son, who I'm thinking, or 21-year-old, you're 21 at that, the 21-year-old son that I'm concerned is going to turn into alcoholism just like his dad did. And you called me and you said, man, I got to do something about this. And that you were willing to go. It was an honor for me to get the call, for you to trust me enough at that point to call me and lay it out there. And then for me to be able to put it together, to have the resources and the ends in the field, to be able to know where to go, and you agreeing to go, and then it was an honor to take you there. And I'll never forget, man. You're a country boy. You don't try to put on airs. You're not dressing to impress. You're being you, and that's what I love about you. You got out of the car in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and you said, I'm going to get this shit done. You grabbed your bag and you went on. And
The folks at that place thought you were there because somebody was making you be there. Boy, did you show them. What was that like, man? What happened? If you mind sharing that, like, what was that experience like? What was it like when you released that trauma? What happened? Man, please share it.
I would say the thing that helped me the most about that place is that I got away. I was away from everything I knew. I was out of state. I couldn't use my phone. I had to write letters to even contact anybody.
Right.
So,
but they processed your trauma. I mean, they did exercises that you said when you released your trauma. What happened when you felt your trauma released?
When I felt
as crazy as it sounds.
It felt like it's a different feeling. I can't really explain it too much, but I'll try my best. It was like I just remember getting done with the first intensive thing that they do. And I will say this because it's a common thing. Other places do it. You get this box and you just start hitting it and screaming. And it's group therapy, so you have to do it around a bunch of people.
Feels a little weird.
It's weird, but you get used to it.
Mm-hmm.
And you just start letting everything out. And you yell at all the people who hurt you and who did you wrong and why you're there, really. And after you're done with that, it's like everybody was in tears. And I just felt like I was walking on air. I went on the porch, and it was just beautiful scenery, woods, mountains, wildlife, my favorite things. And I just sat there for like an hour, just not talking, nothing, just breathing, just relaxed, don't feel all tensed up. That
was like a rebirth for you.
Yeah. It was like I came out of a cocoon.
Yeah.
I never felt better. If there was a drug that make you feel like that, then there'd be some problems.
Man, when I did my trauma work, I collapsed. I didn't like fall out, like, I just had to collapse, and I woke up just like you were talking about, just like free, with some freedom. But what was some realizations that came from that?
That it wasn't my fault. One of the biggest realizations that I had, the biggest one, is that I was so angry at everybody that because they were taking me away from my mom. I was mad at my grandparents. I was mad at everybody for taking me away from my mom in the bad situation. But when I got out of that program.
So at 21, you were still angry. You still had anger, like, man, y'all pulled me out of this dangerous situation, but you left my mom.
Yeah, you left my mom. Why is my mom still in that dangerous situation and I'm gone? But then I realized that y'all were taking me away from the dangerous situation that was my mom. And that opened my eyes a lot. And that helped me a lot. Once I realized that, it was a weight lifted off my shoulders. And I felt very thankful that they did that.
How's life been since then? Do you struggle? What do you struggle with now, or what struggles still come up that may, need some attention, and what freedoms do you have today?
I still struggle a lot with trust, and I still struggle a lot with being around people. I still feel like that the only person I can truly trust is myself, and that I'll never hurt myself. Like, I know people love me. I know I'm a good guy. I know I have a great personality. I think I'm great. But I still just always want to be alone.
You have to fight that isolation.
Yeah. I do. I'm forcing myself to go out, hang out with people, see people, talk to different people, because in the end, it helps you.
Is that part of why you're doing this today?
Yeah. Because
it's like you're making yourself get out of
my comfort zone.
Yeah.
It is out of my comfort zone to talk I don't like to talk, really. But here I am doing this.
You took some shots when you were little. You took some hits. You took some blows to the self-esteem, to security, to ambition. All of the 7 areas of self, man, they took some blows. Is there any strength that gave you? Is there any positives that you have today that you can put, but that polished me, or that strengthened me, or that hardened me?
100%. I wouldn't change my childhood. I mean, believe it or not, I wouldn't change it for anything, because that made me who I am. It helped me a whole lot to endure difficult situations that have came and are going to come. I'm good with dealing in bad situations.
I'll agree with that. You're a solid guy. You're solid. Everybody that interacts with you, everybody just knows that you're a good dude. You're a solid, good dude. Just straight up. And I know not a lot of people saying dude these days, but I will. You're a solid dude, man. And I'm proud that you're my son. And I'll continue to, for as long as I live, to be making living amends to you. And I know I even dropped the ball on that still. I still carry around some guilt, and I probably always will. We don't regret the past, but they don't wish to shut the door on it. I need to keep that in my memory of how I showed up as a human being to the people that I love the most. Buddy, I'm glad you did this, and I think we ought to do this some more.
I agree.
Some of the things it was tough to hear. I needed to hear it. And I'm glad you decided to do it here. I'm glad I decided to do it here. I'm glad we did this, man.
Yeah, I am too. I think it helped
Yeah.
other people, and I think it helped us.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. I love you, son.
Yeah, I love you too.
Whew. Folks, thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. We're going to have more stuff coming. But like I said, I'll probably have no more of a special guest than this guy right here. We'll catch you next time. Be good to yourself.